Jaws. Tariq Khan will be in studio with us. I can't think of a movie that's that old that still could play this well. I mean, as much as I love Rocky, which came out, I believe, a year later, there are parts when you're watching, it seems a little bit slow.
Like the first 45 minutes.
I wouldn't go that far. But with Jaws, if you look at like the beginning and the suspense and then the last hour in the boat, it's still as good as ever. It really is.
Yeah, I probably am not the audience that was as enthralled through every minute of it as you. The whole hunting down aspect of it, I thought it could have been tightened up a little bit. But I think
listen to Gene Siskel over here.
That's
one of the greatest movies ever made. She's smashing it to death.
No, not smashing it to death by any means. But I do think it's one of those like who is. I think there's maybe a little bit of gender differences there. Like every man I know thinks it's the greatest movie that's ever been made, and I don't know a lot of women that say this is my favorite movie of all time. I think it's a very, very good movie.
I think it's a top 5. It's a top 5 movie for me of all time. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to get people's reaction and then ideas about other movies that were made so long ago that still could play today.
Yeah, I love that idea of like, does it still, that it's always a great question when you rewatch something, does it still play in 2025? And I think, Connor, your perspective on that is always interesting because you when we talked about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which was the first movie we did in our Back to the Feature segment, there were some things that I think, Frank, you and I didn't notice as much that didn't play as well to an audience of Gen Z and Gen X.
Well, I think
Xers.
I think Frank's spot on with the. There's a lot of pretty much every movie from the 70s. You can tell that it was from the 70s. It's just different.
How about this? I know we'll get in this with Tariq, but how in the heck, Connor and Jill, could that be a PG?
I mean, the rating was different. Yeah,
think about this for a second. It starts off with a woman naked getting killed. A little boy gets killed. Robert Shaw gets eaten to death. How is that a PG?
It was just like the rating system was just really different at the time. It was like nothing wasn't PG, essentially.
Wow.
Like if it wasn't PG, it was like it's like an adult film. That's like what it was. Like
yeah. And by the same token, I think a lot of parents were. It's like, nope, this is parental guidance, so you can't go until you're a little bit older. But it was a different system. But I did have friends who will talk about the fact that their parents didn't expect it to be as gory and traumatizing. That said, for years they wouldn't go in the ocean because they saw it when they were 7 or 8 years old, and it was definitely not a good movie to watch when you were that young.
And there was one scene that they shot where a father got in front of his son to save his son's life on the beach and got eaten to death, and Spielberg cut it out. I mean, it was gory, and it could have even been more gory. Somebody suggested It's a Wonderful Life, which I think is a wonderful movie, but I would also say there are parts that are a little slow. Yeah.
Yeah. So So this is it's a great question, though. I think there's a lot of.
What about some Hitchcock movie that The Birds? Was that be slow?
Yeah. The only way we can test it, though, because we're bringing too much baggage to it. If we've seen it before, we take where we were in life, what our thoughts are, it has to be almost a test of somebody like Connor watching it for the first time to say whether it stands the test of time or not.
Yeah, I think I think it's I think maybe if you saw it at the time, you don't realize it. But I've seen a lot of these movies already, and I know that they're just very different. Movies are not really shot the same way, and the same kind of timing.
Godfather. Yeah. I guess if you watched it again, you'd say, "Oh, there's parts of it that are slow, as great as it is."
Well, and it depends on what you're looking at. Like somebody here on the Royal Banks of Missouri text line 84126 said, Deliverance stands the test of time for me. Pulp Fiction, Singing in the Rain, and the producers are somebody else. Rear Window. So it depends on what's the criteria. Is it great movies made extremely well, very well directed, well acted? Is it movies that I love watching over and over again because they have an impact on me and make me feel great because I love watching them? I think it depends on your criteria.
Okay. I got one. Shawshank, which it was 1994 or 5, and I don't know anybody who doesn't think that's a great movie and can still watch it today?
100%. It's one of those. We've asked the question before. What's the movie that you always stop and continue finishing into the end? And I think that's one that has come up every single time we've had that conversation.
That's McGraw's favorite movie.
Yeah, it's one of mine too.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Every college basketball player, when they used to have media guides, the thing would be favorite movie. Every one of them. It was all Shawshank Redemption.
And not anymore, though.
No.
It's aged past.
Friend Jeff Drew texting in. I have not seen this. High Noon, 1952.
Oh, that's a classic. That's a Bob Ramsey.
I'll have to ask him about it. I'm sure he's seen it.
Yeah. I think it's a John Wayne. I'm semi sure, but yeah, that's a famous one.
Somebody suggested the Hitchcock movie Rear Window. So, all right, I want to compliment Jill's husband, John. He makes an unbelievable smoked turkey. I'll tell you, turkey can be kind of dull, I'll be honest with you, unless it's got something distinctive. And that thing is smoked like he worked at Super Smokers. It was insanely good. And Reggie just stood on the ground and looked up at this turkey for like 2 hours, just waiting for one little bite, which we gave him a few. It was so good.
Yeah, Connor got one too.
I got one too. I actually texted her last night as well. I said, please pass along my thanks to John. It's really good.
And nothing makes him happier than when you guys. I immediately texted him this morning when you gave your kind words as well. He has it down to a science, and it is hard work. It doesn't just happen by throwing that thing on there. He's got it down to a science, but it is delicious, and it's my favorite of all the things that he puts on the smoker for sure.
All right, let's take our first break. When we come back, the opening dialogue on the Frank and Jill Show on the Big 550 KTRS.
learned, and I heard this from a Catholic priest who had been interviewed, who works in immigration services too. I think a lot of people can agree if somebody commits a crime, any crime that we would commit that would get us in trouble, that just automatically means you have to go back to where you came from, because there shouldn't be a reason that we would
That's
support
probably
them in the
an
system.
80-20 thing, what you're saying.
I think so. The thing that Mark was saying in some of the interviews he'd been doing, and this is true, and the priest talking about it too, is our immigration system and naturalization system is broken. So people will come in with the intention of having a pathway to citizenship that even in the time that Arnold Schwarzenegger would have had his pathway to citizenship, it's a different animal than it is. And in some cases right now, we have people who are trying to do what they were supposed to do and showing up for their process, and the system is too overloaded to get them processed. So they become illegal, even though they're trying to pay attorneys and do things with their hard-earned money that they couldn't have done. And I think there's a differentiation that I know I understand differently than I did initially, and I think some other people are as well.
Yeah, but what he said specifically,
Yeah.
does anybody disagree with that? Should people who come in through immigration behave like guests, like we would behave if we're going to someone's house?
Well, I think there's certainly the pathway to citizenship in our country has always had a process that included, it was a trial period. And so I think you do behave as a guest when you're on a trial period in any situation, right? That's true in a lot of different aspects of life.
But at one point, you could just kind of show up. If we're talking 100, 120 years ago, my ancestors just showed up at Ellis Island from Ireland on the boat. As far as I understand, they kind of got processed and then they were in. So it's not the way it always acted.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Jill.
First thought for me today, this was something that a couple of the different news outlets were covering yesterday, and it's something that I think is worth thinking about, and that is that the county is now implementing a text option for 911. Did you see this?
A text option. Okay.
Yes. So they're saying loudly and clearly that you're still going to have a faster response time, and it's down to about 2 minutes in the county, which I think is pretty
That's
excellent.
impressive.
If you call into 911 and have an emergency, but you can now text an emergency too. They do say it could take up to 6 minutes to get the same response time, so it's not necessarily supposed to take over as the primary use. At first I thought, well, why do they want to have it? Isn't going to create confusion? Why would it be there? They gave some great examples of why it can be useful in ways that calling 911 can't. Number one, if somebody has hearing or speech issues, it can be easier for them to communicate by texting. And number two, there's situations in domestic violence situations, or sometimes when somebody's in a car with a drunk driver and the person is being angry and won't cede over control of the car, you could text in for help without having the person get angry, or in a situation where there's a home invader in your home and you don't want your voice heard. That's another one that they said could be useful. They just want to make sure that people, as in all emergency situations, try to remember the most important information first, which is your location, as well as what you need help with and your name, so that it makes the first responders, have all the data they need to be able to serve you. I have a call into the city. I didn't hear back from them yet
About
this
their
morning.
response time?
Public safety, to see if they would be adding the text 911 option as well.
All right. Thought two. So about 20 years ago, Brooke was about 10. She was pretty industrious, and one summer she decided to conduct her own sports camp at our house. She thought she was pretty smart and had already gone to dozens of camps herself. So we had a really good basketball court, and we had a putting and a chipping area, and a good basement to watch a show during the break, during the hot sun. So she had about 5 or 6 campers from the neighborhood, and 2 of those campers were the Kachuk boys. Last night, one of them, Matthew, won his second Stanley Cup in 359 days, and he did it in style, 3 goals, 4 assists in the series. And he did it coming back from a serious injury. He talked about it with Darren Pang after the game. That is one tough hombre. I mean, you think about that injury and playing hockey again, and he wasn't healthy. He said it was a 50-50 shot that when the playoffs started that he was going to play. I can't tell you how much I love it when St. Louis kids thrive on the national stage, and we just seem to have a national champion or a world champion every year. Last year was Tatum and Kachuk. It's Kachuk this year. It's the next best thing to the Blues or Cardinals winning a title. Congratulations to a great family.
I love that connection. I think it's funny. My youngest daughter, Jane, ran a little camp for neighbor kids as well at our house. Of course, I don't know if how Monique felt about it. At the time, I was like, okay, that means that I'm going to have to run a camp. But actually, I have to say, Jane did a great job running that camp, and I was just there for outside supervision occasionally when needed.
One more thing. Brooke likes to make fun of me because I forced her to go to the UMSL basketball camp. She was the only girl there for 2 years, and the only boy that was really nice to her that would pass her the ball was Jason Tatum.
Oh, really? Yeah. So now she's like, "Thanks, Dad. You gave me a something."
Exactly.
Good. That's a great. That gives her a great story to tell. I always would tell my kids, you have to have something to talk about in therapy someday.
Yes.
So I'm just trying to give you something, because if you go in and say nothing was wrong with my childhood, my parents were perfect, it's a little embarrassing. AI, I know we talk about it a fair amount on here, but it is changing fast. It's going to impact our lives a lot. And a new study shows, that it's not quite as perfect as some people like to pretend it is. New study says that AI can generate a larger volume of creative ideas than any human, but those ideas are too much alike. AI makers say their tools are, quote, great for brainstorming, but experts find that the chatbots produce a more limited range of ideas than a group of humans. Study participants were asked to brainstorm ideas for a toy involving a brick and a fan using either ChatGPT or their own ideas combined with web searches. 94% of the ideas who used ChatGPT had a ton of overlapping concepts. Participants who used their own ideas with the help of web searches had far more unique and practical concepts. So we're not obsolete as humans. Our human brain is still pretty important in the process as well.
Where did you get that?
From Axios. They've kind of taken over the lead of reporting on AI and nationally recognized as a source on AI and tech reporting. So that was their latest study from this morning.
All right, stream of cons. So 6 months ago, in the MAC parking lot downtown, a judge told me, and I've said this story before, the only way to curb crime is to prosecute the offenders the very first time and put them in jail, and they would they'd be a lot less likely to do it again. So in the exact same parking lot last night, I ran into 2 city cops, and they just said they wish that when they bring a case to the circuit attorney, they would act more often. It's better in their mind than it once was, but it's not nearly enough. And that's where they say the frustration lies with city police officers. Another thought. Is there anything you can't learn from YouTube? And I want to open this up to our text lines. Royal Banks of Missouri text line, 84126. Like, what is a great tip or something you've learned that you didn't know about, and you go to YouTube, oh, we figured that out. Like, a garage door has issues. Instead of paying a lot of money for them to come out, you can YouTube it, and they tell you how to fix it. Well, that's what they did with Monique yesterday. I don't know why she just called me. I would have figured it out.
Sure.
Had an issue with my wedge, with my clubs, playing golf. I went to YouTube and got like 3 different thoughts, and I think I've kind of figured it out. So what is your best YouTube self-help story?
Okay, mine's pretty shallow, but it has helped me in a couple of cases. I've used it to help with makeup application when I couldn't figure out how to achieve a look that I sort of liked, and somebody who was probably like 21 years old was able to expertly show me how to do that. I've used it when...
wait a minute, be a little bit more detailed on this. I mean, for most people, when we think you got like that, what do you call that? A
Foundation.
Well, I don't... Yeah, you just put it on your body. Well, you put it on your face. Well, what's
right? But when you're like
it?
trying to, make your eyes look, maybe give it a smoky eye. I think that's what I was achieving, which was a trend, and I could see people doing it. Look. Yes, and I wasn't sure how to achieve that. YouTube was helpful for me in that process. Cooking stuff, I've used it where there'll be something in a complicated recipe that'll describe something specifically, and I want to see visually how it is that they do that. replacing. I used it fairly recently, and John has too, for replacing the light in our refrigerator, which for some reason is as complicated as rocket science to be able to figure it out. So being able to watch him how to do that, that's been helpful for us. Those are 3 off the top of my head.
I bet we're going to get a lot. Well, we used YouTube to replace the main battery in my son's Prius recently. So.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool. So this morning I was grateful as I'm getting ready to butter my toast for a device I learned about from a friend probably about a year or 2 ago. It's called a Butterbell. You ever heard of a Butterbell?
Butterbell. No.
Yeah, Google it. It's a very great device because I grew up in a house in the family of dairy farmers, by the way, ancestrally, where we just always kept the butter on the counter. And that has freaked out friends and family for many, many years. They said, you have to keep butter in the refrigerator. I said, none of us have ever died, and we've been doing it since everybody came over from Sweden a long time ago, but whatever. But the Butterbell is something that you put your butter in, and then it's covered so that there's nothing, no flies can get into it or any of the other things that make people nervous about it. So I looked it up today, and according to food scientists in the at the New York Times, when it comes to condiments, here's the stuff that you should put in the fridge versus keeping out. Have you, and I'm just curious what you guys.
Okay, let's hear it.
Honey, in the fridge or in the pantry?
Pantry.
Of course, because it gets grainy,
Yeah.
right? I started
And
with
it's
a really
too
easy
thick.
one.
But it's supposed to be in the fridge, right? Is it not?
No, it's
Oh.
it'll get grainy if you put it in the fridge.
All right,
Yeah.
next.
Stop doing that.
Okay.
That's okay. I'm going to give you another layup here. Maple syrup.
Oh, pantry.
That's actually no fridge. It can grow some stuff once it's
But doesn't
opened.
it get too thick and you wouldn't be able to, it wouldn't flow out of it?
You have to heat it up, but they said there's some.
Oh, okay.
It's not pasteurized, so that's not. Ketchup. This was surprising to me.
I would think fridge, but yeah.
I've always kept my ketchup in the fridge, but it turns out it's perfectly fine in the pantry. It
Really?
will stay fresher longer in the fridge if you want to, but there's no need to put it in there. Mustard.
I would
I keep it
say
in the fridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I keep mine in the fridge too. It'll keep it spicier longer, but there's no need to keep it in the fridge. You don't have to. This says, and ghee, which of course is a clarified butter, you can keep it on the counter forever. This says butter. It's okay. It says it's okay on the counter for 2 days, but you should put it in the fridge after that. I am living proof that you can never put your butter in the fridge, and you're going to be just fine, even if you eat a lot of it. But you guys do you.
All right, let's take our first break. When we come back, she is Sarah Fenske, executive editor of St. Louis Magazine.
Welcome back, everybody. Frank and Jill show on a rainy Wednesday morning. Time check 10:38. You're listening to KTRS, the Big 550, the Talk of St. Louis. Jill Farmer, Frank Cusimano, really glad you're here. And we always love being joined on Wednesdays by the executive editor of St. Louis Magazine, also the editor of the STL Daily newsletter. And this morning, Sarah Fensky, when I opened up the newsletter, it was really sad to see the story that Ryan Krull was reporting on. Another death downtown, connected again to short-term rental party gone awry. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a sad case. This young man who apparently was from Springfield, Missouri, a 16-year-old, and there had been a wild rooftop party at a loft building that had had much trouble before in the past. And this party around 1 in the morning ended up spilling out into the street, and there was some wild driving. There were shots fired. One woman was hit by a car, one woman was shot, and at this point has survived. And this young man was hit by one of these cars, and he has died. And so, this is not the first time this has happened in St. Louis. It's this ongoing problem. I think what Ryan was probing is the city had some regulations to try to crack down on short-term rentals, trying to prevent just this kind of party that has tended to get out of control and frequently in the downtown area. And those regulations are all on hold because of a legal challenge. And so the city's in a tough place with this that is leading to putting other people in a tough place.
Yeah, so Mayor Tashara Jones signed into law in November, which would require anyone who rents out the property that is not their home for a period of less than 30 days to be permitted by the city, with rules requiring 2-night minimum stay. I don't know what that would have done to prevent this actual death, but why is
let me tell you one thing that would is a lot of times when people are having these parties, they just are paying for like one night, right? They're trying to find like a cheap place to have an event, and if you have this 2-night minimum, it really does cut down on people using it for things like parties. So that is part of the thinking of that regulation.
But why would the judge try to block Mayor Tashara Jones's bill? What was his thinking?
Well, so he, a persuasive legal case was made by somebody who owns one of these short-term rental properties that they said this was a violation of the state's Hancock Amendment, which says the government can't raise taxes without voter approval. Now, with these short-term rentals, they did not raise taxes. However, they were charging a $150 annual fee, and the city said this just pays for the cost of administering this program. Building inspectors have to go out and look at these places. There's some cost of having to supervise this. But this legal challenge argued, no, this is actually a hidden tax, a secret tax that the city's not allowed to just levy, and that was enough for the judge to put this on hold. So he initially did that in April. He then re-upped the hold on this. Suggesting that he thinks there's some chance they might prevail. And so in the meantime, the city basically can't enforce any of these regulations.
Sarah, we're having some technical difficulties with your phone line, so we're going to take a quick break and try to get back to you and see if we can clear that up so we can hear you a little better. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, we are rejoined by Sarah Fenske, executive editor of St. Louis Magazine and editor of St. Louis Daily, which we highly recommend reading every day. Back to this tragedy. I know it's just happened, so it's too early to predict. But if you go back to the Janae Edmondson thing, which really just, put a black eye on our city for a couple of years. In fact, the Sports Commission, people think it has played a role in them not getting everything they want in terms of national events. I wonder what type of lingering effect this tragedy is going to have in terms of blackballing our city again.
I think you raise a good question. I'm skeptical that it's going to have the same impact. And here's why. When the Janae Edmondson case happened, this was just horrific. You saw the photos of her beautiful smiling face. She was here to play volleyball. This happened in broad daylight. She's out with her family. This teen is certainly an innocent bystander, and I do not mean to be victim blaming whatsoever. This should have never happened. It did, however, happen at 1 a.m. And I think there's always a question of, okay, what good comes out of teens being on the street after midnight? There's a lot of major American cities that I would not want a 16-year-old running around at 1 a.m. And so I think it doesn't hit quite as hard for a parent because you say, okay, I wouldn't have my kid doing that in the way that your kid could have been Janae Edmondson. Does that make sense without sounding horrible?
No, it does. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's an important distinction, and we have to look at stuff like that with distinction and clear information. You reported on something this morning in the St. Louis Daily newsletter, which I hadn't heard before, but it was on my mind, and that is that we actually have a company in St. Louis that can turn the vast number of trees down into lumber that could be used for other projects. Because I wondered, we've got so many thousands of trees that came down in that incredible tornado from May 16th. And I thought, are all of those going to go into the chipper, or can something good come out of it? And you told us for the first time about lumber logs today.
Yeah, this company, Lumber Logs, they have been in North City now for 21 years, just kind of quietly doing the work. And from what I can tell, they do really good work. Apparently, a lot of these mills that take trees and try to turn them into logs that can be repurposed, they don't want to take city trees, not specifically a St. Louis thing, just that a tree in the city, might have a flagpole hanging off of it. It might have a bullet in it. Somebody might have stapled it. These are not pristine the way they'd be out in the forest. Well, these guys know how to handle that kind of tree, and they have a long track record of working with companies that want wood to get them wood that doesn't have those kind of flaws with it. And so they have a very brisk business. It's open to the public on Saturdays if people want to avail themselves of their lumber, but it's generally that professionals are buying this wood. And so they said yes. They are now incredibly busy. They said their best kind of tree is not the one that has been picked up and sort of chewed up by the tornado. It's the one that was lightly damaged, but damaged enough that it needs to come down. And they are having great success in finding new uses for those trees.
So we had the story on Channel 5 about the Board of Aldermen signing off on a bill earmarked for $30 million for tornado relief, and the bill would use the $30 million in interest generated on the city's portion of the RAM settlement funds. Anybody argue with that? That seems pretty logical.
Yeah, I think people are unanimous on this. The Board of Aldermen has been very much in a unity mode lately, and you saw unity on this one.
You, Sarah, have been talking about it on Donnybrook. The team has there about the embattled county animal shelter. Originally, speaking of RAM settlement money, Sam Page was saying we're going to need $3 million initially to try to get things shored up there. And some people said, no, we need to take care of the animals, whatever you need. Now, recently this week, $18 million of RAM's money is what, and additionally, that Sam Page is asking for. And the Post-Dispatch this morning is reporting that several longtime employees say that many of the recent problems have come from inexperienced leadership. They're a little bit skeptical that throwing more money at the problem in the facilities is really the core of what's happening. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm interested in what kind of maneuvering County Executive Page is up to on this one, because I think that, if you talk to people who have been paying attention to this, it hasn't really been a lack of funds. And he's coming in with this very big ask that has triggered some pushback from the county council. Came in asking for $3 million. They were skeptical on that. All of a sudden, he's upped it to $18 million. So I can't say I fully understand what he thinks the play is here. I do know people are very passionate about wanting to get that fixed. Maybe he sincerely believes that this is the way to do it. But at this point, the county council is not persuaded. They are not in a unity mode.
My Father's Day gift was Old Town Donuts, and now this 57-year-old family-owned shop, 4 generations, has a chance to win a national championship?
Yeah, they are in the final 4. This is for this website called the64.com, kind of an obscure website, but they're running this donut tournament that is getting a lot of national attention. And it was so nice to talk to Keith Cook, who, part of the family that has run this now for generations. They are just so excited to be in the final 4. So if people want to throw them a vote, I know Keith would appreciate it.
Oh, that's really cool. Sarah Fenske, as always, great information, lots of good stuff to think about. We will look forward to our conversation with you next week as well.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll be right back after this. Fair is joining us now to talk about what's happening at the DuQuoin State Fair a little bit later on in the summer, coming up in August. Is that right, Luke?
That's right, Joe. Yeah, August 22nd through Labor Day, which is September the 1st.
How fun. So what do you guys have on tap this year that people are going to love?
We have a lot going on at the fair. Fair is really our grandstand, which if you've never been to the grandstand at DuQuoin, tremendous history of live shows there. We've got a great lineup this year with legends like, David Lee Roth from Van Halen is playing on Saturday the 23rd, Little River Band on Sunday the 24th, classic rock band Tesla is playing Thursday the 28th, and then a country lineup on the second weekend of the fair, Jake Owen on the 29th, Tucker Wetmore on the 30th, who was just in St. Louis a couple of weeks ago with Thomas Rhett, and then Gabby Barrett on Labor Day the 1st.
All right.
So we're really excited about that lineup.
Luke, let's talk food. What can you get at the DuQuoin State Fair that you just can't get at your local Schnucks? You've probably got some really cool items.
That's a tremendous point. So people look for fair food as kind of a novelty thing, right? That's the only time of the year that you're probably going to eat that sort of thing, whether it's the deep fried sweets like the deep fried Twinkies or the corn dogs or the funnel cakes or the Malone's taffy. We've got all the classics, but we're always trying to mix in new things as well, whether it be different types of pizzas or tacos or freeze-dried treats. So there will be no shortage of novelty food items at the fair this year. That's for sure.
State fairs have definitely taken the lead nationally at getting the most creative about frying foods that we never thought about frying in the past, whether it be an Oreo, a Twinkie, you name it. You guys are also well known for some racing. Racing fans can see some really good action, USAC action, at the DuQuoin State Fair as well.
Yeah, a couple different types of racing here. So we have a mile dirt track here at our grandstand, and on the second weekend of the fair, so that will be actually August the 30th on Saturday in the afternoon, we've got the USAC Silver Crown races, and then on August the 31st on Sunday, a night race, a featured race that is the ARCA National Series. So both of those, long-standing traditions at DuQuoin, and then during the week, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the harness racing. So horse harness racing on Monday the 25th, Tuesday the 26th, and Wednesday the 27th. We have the horses out on the mile. So also a really, really rich tradition here in DuQuoin.
So how many years have you had it, and what's the cost to get in?
So there's no cost to get in, so no admission at the DuQuoin State Fair. The opening Friday night, which is the 22nd, is free parking as well. So no admission, and this is the 103rd year of the DuQuoin State
Holy
Fair.
cow.
So really important event, largest event in this region for sure annually. Tens and tens and tens of thousands of people circulating through the gates over the course of those 10 days.
How quickly can you get there from St. Louis?
You can be there in St. Louis in about an hour and 15 minutes. So if you grow up here where we live, St. Louis is definitely the metro area closest to us and where we get pulled towards different things like shows or sporting events. So it'd be the same for you all. Just hop on 64 and head east there, and you'll be here in just a little over an hour.
And I see all kinds of fun stuff for families. It really is, for only being, hour and a half away from St. Louis, it'd be just a really great way to entertain the family for the weekend as well.
Yeah, our fairgrounds, if you've never been to it, is an extremely large fairgrounds. It's not a small, dusty fairgrounds in any way. It's got hundreds and hundreds of acres of green space, just an enormous grounds, and we take a lot of pride during the fair in providing tons of free grounds entertainment, whether that be your fair industry type entertainment of roaming things or whether it be, different sorts of exhibits or demonstrations. So there is no shortage. Everywhere you turn, there's going to be something that you don't have to pay for, that you can walk right up and watch the demonstration or watch the exhibit and be entertained. So kids and families is a huge emphasis for us. We expanded our carnival last year for kids, and that was a huge, huge hit. So I don't think there's any shortage of things that they could do.
Luke, good stuff. Thanks for your time. Have a great weekend. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us on. Thank you all.
All right. Can you all just picture my co-host here with some overalls headed to the Iowa State Fair, as a 16-year-old?
Oh, 16-year-old, every year of my life I ran to it, yeah.
Big cotton candy, just, having the
100%.
time of her life.
Saving up for the fresh squeezed lemonade, getting throwing up after I went on the ride that my mom said that's going to make you throw up. And I thought, not this year, not this time. Always did.
At that exact same time, I was having lasagna with red wine at Kimmel's.
Yeah. There's some cute guy who lived in my town who I had a crush on. I'd go through try to hold my breath through the hog display because he was going to be there for 4-H, and I wanted to make sure he saw how cute I looked. Was this before or
after you went streaking?
This was probably prior to that time.
Yeah.
I never did streak at the Iowa State Fair, though. Everyone will be glad to hear I did always stay fully clothed.
Pastor's daughter goes wild. I think, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and getting to see some big hits through the years like Bay City Rollers, Molly Hatchet, a lot of pretty big shows there. Hey, speaking of good shows, we got a lot coming up for you in the second hour of the Frank and Jill Show, including one of our faves, Tariq Khan, goes back to the feature with us. We rewatched the movie Jaws. We'll be talking about that right after the news. Don't go away.
I'm Sobe Bay. St. Louis police are looking for the driver in a deadly hit and run this morning in North St. Louis. Police say a man was struck and killed in the eastbound lanes while trying to cross I-70 at Salisbury. The driver sped off after hitting the pedestrian around 12:40 this morning. Anyone with information on the deadly hit and run is asked to call St. Louis police. The victim's name has not been released. There's a move to protect pedestrians in South St. Louis. New safety measures have been implemented outside of the Ted Drews on Chippewa after a series of deadly crashes involving pedestrians. The story from KTRS's Jill Enders.
The city has installed a signalized mid-block crosswalk, brighter lighting, barriers, and other features in an effort to protect pedestrians. The safety improvements are in response to several tragic accidents involving pedestrians, including the death of 17-year-old Matthew Nicolai in July of 2022. He was struck and killed while crossing the street. In that same year, 2 other pedestrians lost their lives in separate incidents, and a hit and run back in December sent 6 people to the hospital. Jill Enders, KTRS News.
The state fire marshal is cautioning Missourians to put safety first as seasonal retailers prepare to sell fireworks across the state. State Fire Marshal Tim Bean said he encourages the public to go to public fireworks displays, but if you choose to use consumer fireworks, do so cautiously. Follow the manufacturer's instructions, do not consume alcohol, and do not allow children to handle fireworks. Last year, 328 people were injured by fireworks in Missouri. The Missouri Department of Transportation is warning residents about a recent text scam. MoDOT reports the scammers claim there's an outstanding unpaid traffic ticket. The scammers then threaten the victims with driver's license suspensions and negative impacts to credit scores. MoDOT says they will never solicit people to pay a toll or traffic violation fee. Meantime, St. Louis County Councilman Mark Harder is taking steps to show residents how to avoid scams. Harder is hosting a town hall tonight called How to Avoid Being Scammed. The town hall will be held at 6:30 tonight at the Baldwin Golf Club. The city of Edwardsville is taking advantage of a once-in-a-century opportunity to celebrate 620-625 Day. 62025 is Edwardsville's zip code, and it's Friday's date. The festivities will take place this Friday at Edwardsville Park. It includes a concert, food, games, a commemorative overhead group photo, and a charity pie eating contest. And Juneteenth is tomorrow, celebrating the 1865 liberation of the last enslaved African American in Texas. KTRS's Steve Potter reports on some of the activities going on in the St. Louis area.
Juneteenth is officially recognized on June 19th, but dozens of events already began this past weekend, featuring everything from family festivals to music events. Coming up on Thursday, the 19th, local musicians are meeting at the National Blues Museum downtown for a public event with the Missouri Arts Council. There's a community block party from 4 until 7 o'clock at the old Cleveland High School building on Louisiana Avenue. From 5 to 8 Thursday evening, the Missouri History Museum is hosting performances of all kinds at its Emo Family Plaza. The annual North County Juneteenth Music Festival at the Knights of Columbus Park in Florissant will feature local performers, food trucks, and a kids zone. There are also events planned at the Missouri Botanical Garden, a block party on Washington Avenue in downtown St. Louis, and a parade and festival in downtown Collinsville. And then, on Friday, beginning at 6 p.m., the 3rd annual Webster Groves Juneteenth celebration and concert will be held at Ivory Crockett Park. Steve Potter, KTRS News.
This KTRS Business Minute is brought to you by Walter Knoll Florist, the place for all your floral needs. Place your order anytime at WKF.com. Stocks on Wall Street right now, Dow Jones up 144 points to 42,360. S&P 500 up 21 to 6,004, and the Nasdaq up 100 points to 19,621. KTRS Sports, Brendan Donovan went 4 for 5, and Alec Burleson homered as the Cards blew out the Chicago White Sox 12-2. Matthew Liberatore snapped a personal 3-game skid to pick up his 4th win. Sonny Gray will get the ball tonight, looking to start a winning streak for the Birds. St. Louis City SC defender Giannis Horn will be returning to his parent club of FC Nuremberg upon the conclusion of his loan at the end of the month. Horn had expressed a desire to return home to Europe after appearing 18 matches for City SC, going back to last summer. KTRS weather. The National Weather Service has issued a tornado watch in effect until 4 this afternoon. This means conditions exist that could trigger a tornado. Rain and potential heavy storms are in the forecast with a high today of 85. Tonight, mostly clear with an overnight low of 67. Tomorrow, sunny and a high of 84. Right now, we have 77 degrees under cloudy skies. Time is 11:08. I'm Sobe Bay, KTRS News, the talk of St. Louis.
Wow. The movie is Jaws, 50th anniversary, Tariq Khan in the house. Budget $9 million, box office a staggering $476 million. The highest grossing film of all time until Star Wars came along shortly afterwards. Library of Congress selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry on TV. This is the best out of them all. It aired for the first time in '79. Keep in mind, that's 5 years after everybody saw it at the theaters. A 57 share for a movie that had been out for 4 years. 57% of the TV audiences were glued that night, I believe, to ABC. Tark, why this movie?
Okay, hard to believe it's been 50 years this week since Jaws hit theaters. And this movie, I think it really changed cinema as we know it. It was a watershed moment in cinema history. It made people want to go to the movie, go to the movies, experience this film on a big screen and see it with an audience and just react and bewilder like we had rarely seen ever before. I mean, the suspense, the intensity, the action sequences, and really the characterizations are so rich. This was just one of the best cinematic experiences in history at that time.
What do you think made it stand out compared to some other previous blockbusters 3 years before? This would have been the Poseidon Adventure, and those were, cultural juggernauts in their own way. But Jaws took it to a whole new level. What was the difference?
Well, of course, Jaws, and I wouldn't really call it a sort of a traditional horror movie like we consider today, but really it scared people. And of course, sharks. I mean, what's more terrifying on this planet than sharks? So just the idea of seeing people, on film, at the beach, going in the water, and then being attacked by sharks. I mean, the fear of what's in the water. I mean, that was just so compelling, and people were so fascinated by it and wanted to, go and see what was going to happen to the people, there on the screen as in the water. For people who maybe hadn't read the book and didn't know what was going to happen, it was so shocking at the time, to suddenly see, for example, the opening sequence, the famous sequence where you see that teenage girl, suddenly go out in the water and just get, eaten alive. I mean, we had never seen anything before like it at the time, and just an unforgettable moment, unforgettable film.
Yeah, and how we talked about this earlier. Why was it only a PG? You start with nudity, you start with violence, little kids getting eaten up, grown men getting eaten up. How is it only a PG?
Good question. Good question. I suppose because it was viewed at the time as being, I suppose, like not. It wasn't like a serial killer kind of movie. It was an animal. It was a shark, and so I suppose they thought that was something that that people accepted that that sharks could be dangerous, and to be honest, there wasn't that much violence throughout the film. I mean, there were obviously in key sequences, at the beginning with a little boy. He was killed towards the end, but it wasn't, nonstop violence throughout the film. So I think actually they made a fair decision giving it a PG rating, because I saw it as a kid. I think I was too young. I saw it actually on its re-release. I was 8 years old, and I had nightmares. But I think really for children, with their parents, children of a certain age, it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, I think you and I are very close to the same age. I think a lot of us in our generation had a hard time the first time we got to the ocean because of that. Speaking of the ocean, this was one of the first times that a major cinematic release had actually been shot on the ocean. It was always done before that, it's my understanding, in the studio.
Exactly.
Which is one of the reasons that we went from the original budget of $4 million to $9 million. What was supposed to be a 55-day shoot was 159 days instead. How did it end up? It ended up delivering, obviously, the box office. Did that get carried over to the Academy Awards in terms of appreciation for it?
Yes. Good point. Jaws was nominated for Best Picture of 1975. There were only, 5 nominees back then, and it was one of them, up alongside the likes of Dog Day Afternoon and Barry Lyndon, Nashville, and, of course, the eventual winner, One Flew the Cuckoo's Nest. Jaws had 4 Oscar nominations. Now, famously, Steven Spielberg, who did such an astonishing job as a 26-year-old director, was not nominated for Best Director, which was, I think, a really ridiculous, oversight, because his work in the film, I think, was just incredible. But yeah, Jaws won 3 Oscars for film editing and for sound and for score. I think no one really expected to win Best Picture, but the fact that it competed, I think, says a lot about the quality of the film and the way it was perceived by not just audiences, but the Academy as well.
All right, an analysis of the characters. Underrated. Mayor Larry Vaughn, Murray Hamilton, not wanting to close down the beach and lose revenue.
In his suit out on the beach.
Yes.
Those scenes, love it.
A shady politician played perfectly. 5'5" Richard Dreyfuss won an Oscar for The Goodbye Girl. And in this movie, he plays the role of George Costanza, an actual marine biologist. And then we have Roy Scheider, but the irrepressible Robert Shaw. The analytics on his life are interesting. Dies at 51, 3 wives, 6 kids. He could not complete scenes on this movie because he was drinking so much, and Spielberg had to, cut it down. They had to reshoot scenes because he was drunk.
Yeah, and it's funny, Robert Shaw, as the shark hunter, this was genius casting, because you can't really imagine anyone else playing the part as well as he did. And it's funny, he'd been nominated for 1 Oscar for Best Supporting Actor of 1966 for A Man for All Seasons. He lost to Walter Matthau in The Fortune Cookie. But for Jaws, he really should have been nominated for Best Supporting Actor and might have, won, because he was just, so astonishing in that role. And if ever there was a role, I think, made for one actor in like an action film, this was it. A stand-up performance. And of course, Roy Scheider and Richard Dreyfuss, fantastic performances as well. Jaws is not really a film that we think about the acting, but I went back and rewatched it for the first time in many, many years, and it was fascinating. The performances of both Roy Scheider and Richard Dreyfuss, both so layered. Both so nuanced, both so three-dimensional. Fantastic performances. They were not nominated, but would have been quite worthy as well.
Yeah, I agree. Connor, this is one of your favorite movies, even though, of course, it was made decades and decades and decades before you were born.
I think it's only about 2 decades before I was born.
So tell me what why you think it stands the test of time and what you like about it.
We've hit on it a bunch. I really love how it was shot. I love the performances, as you just mentioned. Really layered. Everyone thinks of just the shark stuff, but it's really... There's really only like 3 scenes that are really shark heavy. The beginning, the little kid in the bay, and then not a scene. It's more like the whole last, third is about it. But before that, it's really just about these kind of guys talking about the shark and talking about sharks, and it's just about performances. And Jill, I think you're getting back at me because I didn't really like Pretty Women by saying you didn't really like this movie all that much.
Oh, I do like it. I like it a lot, actually. I don't know that it would not make my list of top 5 in terms of sitting down and enjoying. Particularly, I'm a little weak when it comes to gory stuff. So the whole, there's a limb that's been, even though I know now by today's standards it's not considered as realistic as what we see, it still kind of grosses me out a little bit. And the whole hunting scene, the last 45 minutes of the film, just, hunting that could have been tightened up a little bit to me. But it's not that I don't like it. That would be unfair to say for sure. But it's not one of my top 5 for sure.
What about stuff that happened on the set? There's much has been written about Mr. Shaw's relationship with Mr. Dreyfuss, being anti-Semitic, making fun of him, making him or offering him a challenge of getting on top of the boat, and I'll give you $5,000 if you jump off it at the top, and just really because this Dreyfuss was really young in his career, and I just get the impression Shaw was not a nice man.
Yeah, that's what's been widely written and commented about over the years. And it's funny. I think it's a case where, as unlikable as he was on the set, and as problematic as he was, all the stories of his tantrums and his difficulties with cast members, despite all that, I think audiences can almost forgive him because he was so great in the role. Mm-hmm. And I suppose for anyone who actually worked with on the set, the crew, the cast, would be one thing. But for anyone else who watched the film, he was so good that you can almost dismiss anything he did wrong on the set because he was so great in the role.
He was supposed to be crusty, salty, and difficult, and unfortunately for the people working with him, they had that. Yeah, he got the right guy. So I was reading some stuff and kind of getting lost down the rabbit hole about the mechanical shark named Bruce, which is the name of Spielberg's lawyer, which I thought was brilliant.
Yes.
Often malfunctioned and caused delays. And of course, the director talked a lot about wishing that he was shooting on dry land. But what about that mechanical shark, and how groundbreaking was it for its time?
It's funny. It wasn't as, perhaps, I think, as realistic as Spielberg wanted it to be. And that's why actually we didn't see as much of the shark as I think you would like, but it actually worked out well. Because throughout the film, you don't really see the shark that often. And it's really more about the mystery, the anticipation. You see
the barrels
the water,
on top of the water.
Exactly right. You see the waves, and occasionally you look for that the fin to show up. And it was so fascinating. I mean, just the mystery behind the shark. So the fact that we actually didn't see it as much, I think actually added the impact, because you're in the audience there and you're like waiting to see it. And finally it shows up. And wow, does it blow you away? So, and especially at the end there, when you do see the shark, more of it, I think actually it was very effective then, especially for the time. I mean, 50 years ago, we didn't see effects like that. So I think it was very, very impressive for its time.
Let's talk music. And Connor, you can play it in the background as we discuss it. The Jaws soundtrack. I would think this soundtrack, along with Tubular Bells from The Exorcist, would be the two most famous soundtracks of all time. This one by John Williams, I believe.
Oh, yes, of course, he won the Oscar. I would, for example, maybe throw in, Raiders of the Lost Ark and Chariots of Fire, Star Wars, some other classics, but Jaws, no question. I mean, the score was so compelling and really drew viewers in. And Spielberg himself, he said that the film, it would not have been the success it was without the score. I mean, in a sense, the score was kind of the heart of the film. It was the magic that put everything together. So without it, I mean, you can't really imagine Jaws without the famous score, right? I mean, and of course, the way, of course, it's been, parodied and used over and over and over, since then. I mean, absolutely unforgettable. Genius score, I think.
Yeah, it really is. And you said it right. I mean, it still kind of stands. It's today. It could still be used in at least a comic.
Jill, I'll tell you, actually, in the 5 on Your Side newsroom, I always sort of hear that the score when Frank's coming over the desk asking me for a request. I think, oh no, here it comes.
Yeah, you better deliver.
Yes. Or otherwise, I'm going to be in big trouble.
Peter Benchley wrote the book that was a very popular novel at the time, and he says he based that loosely on the 1916 Jersey Shore shark attacks, which I didn't know. And I also didn't know until reading up on this after rewatching the movie that Peter Benchley actually has a little cameo. He's the reporter on the beach.
Yeah, I noticed that when I watched the credits, right. So good for him that he actually got a little shot. It's funny, actually, if it had been me, I wouldn't have wanted to cast myself as somebody actually gets eaten by the shark, because I want to be that that memorable. So, by the way, may I just mention, one of the fascinating things about Jaws is the first three victims of the film. It's a teenage girl, then a dog, and then a little boy. I mean, the most vulnerable people. You think that, gosh, I mean, but I suppose that in effect, added to its impact, just seeing the shock of, such people who, we would, relate to and root for, just, get eaten alive.
There's so many little catchy lines. Here's to swimming with bow-legged women. And maybe the most memorable scene outside of the shark eating people was the son imitating Roy Scheider when they're sitting down. He needed to be cheered up. And that was unbelievable work.
It really was. And that was, I think, really very skillful acting, on the part of both Scheider and the actor who played his son, because that scene, it was so realistic. And it's funny, that was a scene where I think actually a lot of people, family members, saw themselves. I think a lot of fathers saw the relationships with their sons, and that was, I think, really, an important moment in the film, because Roy Scheider, he was a family man. He was all about protecting his family and the people in the town. I mean, that's what, he was there for, and his goal all along was to keep the people safe, including his family.
Friend wanted me to ask you about the Robert Shaw rewriting the USS Indianapolis speech. What do you know about that?
Oh gosh, well, I just know that the impact. I mean, that speech itself. I mean, the monologue there was so powerful, and I mean, it's funny. I went back to reread some of the history about it, and that monologue. I mean, Robert Shaw, his acting there, an absolute masterclass. And I think that scene, in fact, should have gotten him a Best Supporting Actor Oscar nomination. He would have been so worthy, and perhaps he would have won because his delivery of that monologue was just marvelous.
And what did like big screen television do for Jaws? I think it was one of the things that really increased the legendary status of it. Because when you watch this at home on a big screen, unbelievable.
Oh, sure. Now, it's funny. Back in the day, of course, when I first saw it, rewatched it on television, I think back then, I think most people had smaller televisions, right?
Yes.
Most of the screens were small. And so I think Jaws didn't quite have the same impact on the small screen. But I know, for example, when it was re-released in 1979, 4 years after its initial release, people went back to see it. That's when I first saw it. So, that I think was, I think actually Jaws was one of the first films where it really was meant to be seen on the big screen. And seeing it on TV, I mean, it was still entertaining, but nothing like seeing it on the big screen. And of course, 2 years later, Star Wars, which overtook it as the biggest hit at the time, another great film which had to be seen on the big screen. So again, Jaws, it changed cinema as we know it by making that movie experience we had to see at the cinema.
One thing that I'm getting a text and somebody says you cannot underestimate the details that Spielberg put into this film. For instance, Susan Backlany, who played the shark's first victim, was harnessed to two ropes that dragged her back and forth because when she was just trying to emulate what it would feel like when a shark took her under, it wasn't realistic enough, so they needed to jerk her back and forth with real ropes.
Oh, yes, and boy, how effective was that, right? I mean, and I think for audiences seeing the film and, right as the film opens, seeing her being attacked by the shark, I mean, it was so believable, so realistic. And by the way, Jill and Frank, maybe you recall this. Did you, as kids, ever actually play Jaws in the swimming pool, and pretend to be
yes.
attacked? Remember actually one time, I was so convincing, actually, people thought I really was drowning because, my attack, imitation was so successful. So much fun playing, in the pool after seeing Jaws, so...
There were 3 sequels, and I actually thought Jaws 2, especially the last 45 minutes of it, was pretty horrifying. I think one of the sequels was good. How about the others?
Yeah, I think Jaws 2 was very entertaining. Jaws 3 and Jaws 4, probably not so much. But yeah, Jaws 2. I mean, really, I think much more action. I mean, the carnage. I mean, so multiplied. From the first one. It's interesting, actually. In Jaws, the original Jaws, there isn't as much of the killing as we might expect, and I think that was actually made it very effective because we're waiting, and it's just the mystery and just not knowing what's going to happen next, and then it's all about quality and not quantity, and so when it did happen in Jaws, that's why it's so memorable. I mean, again, Chrissy Watkins, the character who dies in the beginning, the little boy, and of course towards the end when Robert Shaw, the shark hunter, when he gets eaten alive. I mean, those are moments that we just never forget and will always associate with Jaws.
Do you have this in your top 5 of all time?
Not of all time, Frank. No, I mean,
because
it's a great
yours
movie.
are from 1930 and
right,
before.
yes, exactly.
Jeez.
I mean, personally, I do prefer, I suppose, more traditional dramas, whatnot. But Jaws, again, it's not just an action movie. It really is a film that is well written, has 3-dimensional, fascinating characters, and together, putting together all the elements, makes it for such a great film. And for folks who haven't seen it in a long time, I suggest watching it again. Now you can see it on a big screen at home. You'll love it.
And is it still considered the best or maybe the first summer blockbuster?
Oh, absolutely, yes. I mean, since before that, I don't think we really had summer blockbusters the way we did now. And so, yeah, I mean, Jaws. I mean, it made that summer movie time event. I mean, something that everyone had to experience.
Mm-hmm.
You're the best. It's such an honor to have you in here. Thank you so much. That's Tariq Khan, who's with us every Wednesday. We're excited he's with us on Back to the Feature. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, fun segment. So we all admitted that we were scared of the water after we watched that. Connor, did you see it young enough that it made you scared of the water?
No, I think I was already a teenager, so I wasn't really afraid of the water at that point.
Okay, that's good. No, less childhood trauma on your part, which is good. Hey, we have lots more coming up in the show after this. Little Paul McCartney bringing us back from break. He turned 83 years old today. By the way, that's my favorite Paul McCartney and Wings song.
Well, that's good.
So that's not Wings, though, I believe.
No.
If that's just, it was his solo.
The
work.
solo era, yeah.
Yes.
But
Okay.
Linda's featured, I believe he wrote it for her. So even though she was part of Wings, she was the motivation behind the song, is my understanding. Not having talked to Paul directly or in person about that, I can't confirm
Next time
it.
I talk to him, I'll ask him his motivation.
Okay, so Connor, you called it, and you were right. Per usual, the listener's idea that we have a song of the day that coincides with the days of the week, and the song about the days of the week proved a little more difficult on a Wednesday than it had on Monday,
It's not
Tuesday,
surprising.
or Friday. I did find a couple. There's a funny old Johnny Cash song that has Wednesday in the title, and this one I would say it's a B-side for sure, but certainly people are going to recognize the artists. This is that toe tapper known as Wednesday Morning 3 a.m. by Simon and Garfunkel.
You really had to dig for that one.
Yeah, well, I had to Google songs about Wednesday for sure. Quote of the day: I'm a Christine Baranski fan. I think she's very fun, and she did a fun interview, I thought, with Seth Meyers on her evolution from thinking she only wanted to do theater and film to understanding that TV acting, which for her started on her memorable role on, remember the show Sybil with Sybil Shepherd, and the wonderful way that she's decided that being a TV actress is pretty darn great after all. I thought that was just a good perspective on thinking about it. And I hadn't thought about Sybil Shepherd in a really long time until I was reading that's where Christine Baranski got her start. Were you a Moonlighting fan with
I
Sybil
was
Shepherd
not.
and Bruce Willis back in the day?
I did not watch the program.
But do you remember how wildly huge that was at
And they
its
didn't
time?
get along in real life? Is that
Yeah,
right?
I think they both were in what maybe would be described as challenging times in their personal lives. I'm a big fan of the show The Gilded Age. Have you heard of that?
I have not.
It's kind of Downton Abbey-esque. That's probably not a style or historical fiction.
I don't think I'd be trending in that direction.
Would not be trending your direction. I love it. It's done on. It's on not on HBO but on Max. And
Do you have some white wine when you watch that? Or?
I would if I did have drinks during the week. I would definitely pour myself a glass of white
Aren't
wine
they HBO
and eat
again?
bonbons.
Isn't that what they're doing? They're like rebranding back to HBO.
Oh, I didn't know that. Thank you
Yeah.
for being on top of that. But Gilded Age, for anybody else in our listening audience who likes it like I do, is coming back on the 22nd. So it's going to be just a few more days until. It is. I mean, John makes fun of it too. He was not a Downton Abbey fan. He said this is about as exciting as paint drying. And there are, a lot of near fainting and plot lines that have to do with silverware. But I still really enjoy it. I'm not going to lie.
Do you like to read poetry by the pond too, or?
No, I don't. But I do like watching movies where the characters enjoy reading poetry by the pond.
Okay, that's nice.
He said with great disdain and judgment in his voice. People can watch us now on YouTube.
That's right.
On
I'm giving him-
KTRS TV. They can actually see the
You can
faces
feel the
that you make at
sarcasm.
me
That's right.
as well. And we do
Love
hope.
Gilded Angel, somebody texting in.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Jill might have the sweetest radio voice I've ever heard from 314.
Ah, thank you.
Somebody asking if there's another season of Gilded Angel.
Gilded Age, yes.
Gilded Age is.
Yes,
okay.
and it is. It's starting on June 22nd for those who actually.
Also another
like it.
season of Harry Bosch.
A couple people really had some fun things to say about the excellent segment on Jaws that Robert Shaw nailed the role. That it was the same person who created the squid for Disney's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea who saw it. Somebody said, I saw Jaws when it was first released 50 years ago, and I still won't go in the ocean.
That is wild.
That
Still
music.
holding on to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, still hold on to that
I mean,
fear.
I'm telling you, if you were a little kid watching that, it was, again, it's probably modern day parenting. We wouldn't be doing that like we did back in the day. Hey, I had a great experience. Once again, I told you guys yesterday that my friends at Premier Heating and Cooling were going to come solve a problem for us, and that's that we had some really outdated thermostats in our house. I mean, really outdated, that were kind of sending the temperatures to and fro in ways that not only were not particularly comfortable, but also were creating, I think, higher bills than we wanted to see. Our utility bills were higher than they needed to be because there's such good options out there for working with utility companies on trying to make sure that you're using your energy at non-peak hours. And since we can do that all digitally now, you need the thermostats that can help you manage things from the ease of your phone, can help manage the temperature of your home when you're away from home. You can set it when you're on vacation and then make sure it's nice and cool when you come back. All things that have been available technologically for a while, but were not available to the farmer family because we didn't have the thermostats and to be able to support those modern comforts and conveniences. Premier Heating and Cooling, I called them. I said, this is what I want. They said, that's excellent. We have all the details about your heating and cooling units. So we'll do some research about the best thermostats that are compatible and will work well with the units that you have in your home. We'll get back to you with the price so you can make sure that it fits within your budget and your preferences as well. And we set up the appointment. I had plenty of great communication ahead of time. And as per usual, as every other customer experience I've had at Premier Heating and Cooling, it was top notch. Everything worked perfectly. My home is staying cool and comfortable on this very humid day today. And I'm hoping to see some savings coming in my next utility bill because I'm now able to take advantage of this new technology out there. PremierHeatingCooling.net, 636-916-1122.
You can shop them online today. See their entire inventory online at Bomarito.com.
Oh,
That's great.
yes.
Remind me what that is.
Tubular Bells.
Tubular
Exorcist.
Bells
Oh,
from The
yeah,
Exorcist.
I've used this on many sports features over the years. Back when we could do that.
So, Frank, you know that the song itself is like 30 minutes long then. Have you seen that? You
I
ever
have
listened to
not.
the whole
It's
song?
really
It's like, it is.
longer than Midnight Express.
Yeah, it's like, I'm looking at it now. It's 26 minutes long. It changes like themes completely multiple times. It stops being, it becomes unrecognizable.
Play Midnight Express for us too. I think we've gotten the three most ominous movie soundtracks with Tubular Bells, Jaws, and Midnight Express. You've watched the movie, I'm sure, Jill,
I don't think I have.
about Billy Hayes, who's caught. He's trying to come back to the United States. He's got a little bit of marijuana with him. He's in Turkey, and they throw the book at him. It's a true story, and he ends up getting sexually abused and beaten having the crap beat out of him in a Turkish prison for years, and he finally gets out. It's unbelievable. I mean, you talk about intense.
And what era is it from?
Probably maybe late 70s, could be early 80s.
Yeah, no, I think I missed that one, but it
Yeah.
sounds
You
very
got it there?
compelling.
Yeah, is it this? This is what you
Yeah.
Yeah.
I use this in sports all the time.
It's catchy.
Yeah. And when the last scene, keep playing this, the last scene, the guard, I don't think this is a spoiler alert since the movie's 40 years old. He gets the guard to come into his area and then somehow spears him. And the last scene is him running out of the Turkish prison with the guard's uniform on and finally safe. I mean, the fact that it's a true story made it great.
Oh, that's really cool.
All right, what else is a true story is what is happening in the WNBA. It's one of the most talked about things in the sports world and in the country
A couple
today.
of listeners have asked us to bring
Yes.
this up today.
So Caitlin Clark got poked in the eye, and it was a kind of a vicious hit. I don't think it was accidental. She pushed back at the player on the Sun, and then another Sun player just knocked her down. Now, you could argue, was she flopping? I think it's good for the league because it puts more eyes. The only thing I'd be cautious of, Jill, is you don't want to go too far and get the golden goose hurt. Because when she was hurt, when she had that injury and she missed 5 games, there was a 55% drop in national television ratings. And I don't mean to be brutal, but let me just say this. If she's out of the league, the WNBA goes back to being the WNBA. If she's in the league, there's electricity, there's eyeballs, there's people saying, hey, when does she play again? You better be careful because you don't want to get the golden goose hurt.
Yeah, I think, I mean, again, I am not the person to have an objective perspective on this. I mean, I did see a really good interview with Michael Jordan's talked about this, Magic Johnson, about, the whole rookie aspect of joining the league, that you're going to get pushed around a bit and you got to be tough about it. And I do think I'm probably one of them, but a lot of her diehard fans, particularly the Iowa Hawkeye fans all over my social media feed this morning, going crazy about anytime she gets, pushed
Yeah.
around. There is some physical toughness that's required. She's always been good at making a claim when she gets hard to make sure
Yeah.
that she gets a little more space to do what it is that she wants to do, and she doesn't like getting pushed
And
around too
she's
much.
not an angel, and she is kind of whiny from time to
but
time.
she's also funny afterwards because she, like when you saw the David Letterman interview with her, he's like, how mad do you get? And she goes, not that mad really, but it's kind of part of the game. I'm getting tougher, but she knows, she states her case.
And there is a local angle to this story. And I want to read Dave Portnoy's tweet. I blanking love Sophie Cunningham. About time somebody said enough is enough. You cheap shot Caitlin, and we will get you. Sophie Cunningham, maybe the best Mizzou basketball player of all time, stepped in right away. You know what's amazing, too, is Sophie Cunningham is this knockout woman who, if she wasn't a professional basketball player, could be on the cover of Vogue. And yet, her niche in the NBA right now is kind of protecting Caitlin. She's no longer like a great player. She's never been a great WNBA player, but there she is, sticking up and going, eye to eye with these players that have just knocked down Caitlin.
Yeah, I mean, I hear your point too. If Caitlin goes, it would hurt the whole league. I do have to say though, last year I have friends and people and male friends and family members who were very, very much poo-pooing the WNBA and saying, oh, it's only the Caitlin factor. They got invested, one of whom became a pretty big New York Liberty fan, and now he's still a really big New York Liberty fan, watching him play, knows the players.
And it's all because of Caitlin.
Yeah,
he would
that
not
was
have
the
watched
start,
it.
right.
And now, hey, these other players are really good. And believe me, there are other players that are actually better than Caitlin. And some of these women are just incredibly skilled and talented.
Yeah, so I'm saying, yes, I think the pathway is there, but I think it is being delivered. There are other athletes in the league that are delivering some really good performances as well. I have a funny story to tell you about playing ping pong and a popular bar in St. Louis for doing that that my neighbor told me. I'd never heard about it before. I'm curious if you have. We can talk about that in just a couple of minutes. But first, if you're hungry, remember, we all recommend, all of us in the studio here, that we really think the best place for you to grab lunch is possibly Three Bay Barbecue and Bakery. That's because they can get you an absolutely delicious and amazing lunch fast if you need to grab it and go. If you have some friends, you want to get out of the office and sit down together, they have a lovely place for you to sit down and enjoy a nice lunch together. Or if you're trying to plan that office get together to celebrate maybe a great month of sales or somebody's special life event, they can take care of that for you as well. Whatever your need is for a great meal, Three Bay Barbecue and Bakery can deliver it. And convenience, yes, absolutely. They're located at Clayton Road and 141, kind of right in the middle of everything. You may just pass by, and you may have driven by it a whole bunch of times and not realize they were there. That's because they're in the back of the Phillips 66 station at Clayton Road and 141. The Grosses own the gas station, and you can go in, get your gas, get your things at the convenience store. And then now, for the last 10 years, they've had one of the best barbecue restaurants in the entire area in the back. Why? Because they love food. They love bringing people together to eat great food, and that's why they said, we can be more than a gas station. We can provide a great gathering place with delicious food as well. Check out their catering items or what you might want to go eat before you go pick it up today at 3baybarbecueandbakery.com, or better yet, go visit them today and get a delicious lunch in the Phillips 66 station at Clayton Road and 141. 3 Bay Barbecue and Bakery. It has been a fun show on Frank and Jill show today. And tomorrow we have a delicious, delicious person coming in to talk about on the weekly special.
Yes, Phil Judd from one of my favorite
Pat
places.
Judd,
Daily Bread.
Yeah, Patrick Judd, yeah.
What am I doing? Oh, my gosh. I'm looking at two different names here. God, yeah. Patrick Judd, he's father of 6.
I know, isn't that cool?
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's great food and a great gathering place. His story is really fun and interesting as well. I think it's going to be a great conversation. Who's on the press box tonight?
Tonight, Andy Strickland, who knows hockey as well as anybody in St. Louis, will be breaking down that incredible victory by Florida, and Charlie Tuna Edwards. We call this show The Slop because there's not a whole lot of things that get accomplished. So.
Or I would say a lot of good stuff gets put together into an interesting way. Hey, have you heard of the Arena Bar being a ping pong mecca in St. Louis?
I have not.
Have you heard of that, Connor?
I don't even think I've heard of the bar.
I hadn't either, but apparently one of my neighbors, an acquaintance, was telling me her grandson, I just love this story, who is in college, and her dad, who's in his 80s, have always loved ping pong, and this is a place that's well known for people who love ping pong. I knew about people going to the bar to play pool, right? But I wouldn't think of it. But apparently it's a gathering place for people who like to play ping pong. It's kind of it's not a fancy kind of newfangled with a lot of great TVs. It's more of just a dive bar that it's well known for people who love to go play ping pong. You're going to find other people there who are really good at the game, and they go play it.
Wow.
So I love this. I think the whole dive bars that are known for things like the Iowa Buffet is really well known for karaoke. I have friends that will go.
Oh, who doesn't know about the Iowa Buffet and their famous karaoke?
Yeah.
What city is that in?
I think it's the whole, or Milo's for Bocce. It's that whole dive. You go do your thing specifically at your place, and you don't care if anybody else knows about what it is you like to do. That's what makes it kind of fun.
We had a couple that for like 2 or 3 years, we'd hit a dive bar once every 2 months. Yeah. I don't even remember some of the bars.
I know, and that's the thing. I was telling another friend about that. There's this place we like to go, and I can describe it, but I couldn't remember the name because there's not even a really big sign about it.
Buddy just texted in because we talked about Sybil Shepherd that she actually dated Elvis. So I
Yes.
don't know of anybody who dated more famous women: Natalie Wood, Peggy Lipton, Anne Margaret, Priscilla, Connie Stevens, Sybil Shepherd. That's quite a run there.
And also, I think Jean Smart at some point had some kind of a
Jean
crossover.
Smart,
with
really. The woman who
Elvis.
just still looks so good.
Yeah, I know.
Rita Moreno, he dated. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah, that he had that crossover. But yeah, Sybil Shepherd and Elvis were pretty serious for a time. And supposedly really liked each other. It wasn't that, remember the studios used to set people up who were beautiful people just so that people could take pictures of them and say, you're going to be a couple whether you really like each other.
Yeah, they used to do
or
that.
not.
Surely they don't do that anymore.
Do you think they still do?
Of course.
Yeah, you're right. It has to be, yeah. Or at least
Or
they'll
it's more like
plant seeds.
It's more like probably not the studios doing it, but it's like self-driven by these people.
Yes,
that,
their PR people
their
are
PR
making
people
sure.
like it. Yes.
Yeah, I think you bring up a very good point. Well, fun conversation about Jaws. Our next movie that we're going to be talking about is one that I think a lot of our listeners will be willing to rewatch with us again, Airplane.
Starring Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, among others.
In 2 weeks, we'll be talking about that. We do this segment every other week. Got a great show for you tomorrow. Greg Willard's going to be in, as well as our friends from the Daily Bread. So we will look forward to that. We'll be back in 22 hours, everybody. Make it a great day.